if you're a designer, no offense, but this is not for designers. It's actually for anyone that wants to create and iterate on a design. So, and the reason I'm stressing this, of course, the designers can use the product, absolutely. But the main use case for Claude Design to me is it gives all of us a designer. Like that's it. And so that's why I put all the other roles except design: operator, founders, execs, engineers, product managers, recruiters, whoever, even the marketing department, obviously, I would put that in the operator category in my buckets here. So one thing is, I think if anyone's joined before, I love the rapid fire questions and all that, and I'll go through as many of them as I can. I think on every one of these, I've gotten through all of them. So please drop your questions at any time, and we will have some time at the end to kind of go through that. And again, today it's about going from beginner to pro in 15 minutes with Claude Design, and this is the 15 minutes that's starting right now. So let's go. Okay. Yeah. So we'll be covering 2 demo workflows that explain how I actually use Claude Design. And I found these 2 workflows as the main workflows that I would divide up how you use it. A lot of times people start design and don't have any idea of that. So this was a reason that I wanted to really point that out. Then at the end, there's going to be 5 tips at the end, meaning towards the end. So that's when I'm going to actually share the things I learned very specifically that are going to help you become that pro really quickly. And I really mean that. So put me on notice if you feel like my tips aren't good enough. So like I said, why Claude Design? I know I shared a little bit of this earlier, but like the bottom line is and again, this is one way to say it. It's not quite, it's pretty accurate, but basically we have access to a expert designer with Claude Design. And we've never had access to an expert designer like that in the way that a designer thinks. So what essentially Anthropic has built with Claude Design is they've essentially built a harness. For any of you that don't know what a harness is, these days we call all the stuff you have to do around the large language models to be a harness. So that means that there's a whole bunch of stuff going on with Claude Design, not just like Claude AI and you're just chatting with it, but they've got a whole bunch of scaffolding to make it really good at what it does at design, or let's say attempt to be good at design. So this is why I'm really impressed with it, because they have taken the point of view of a designer and the way a workflow for design would work and kind of put it into a product. All right. So I had mentioned that there's these sort of 2 ways that I like to use it, but I think these are actually the 2 main use cases for a product like this. So the first use case is basically create. So that's where we can take something and design from scratch. And you'll see what I mean by when I say take something, because you always need to take something and use it. And then iterate is really about improving existing design. So I will talk about what that looks like in terms of what the difference is between these 2 with some very specific examples. So let's jump right into those. So when I say create a new design, I literally mean create a new design. So in this demo, I'm going to show you how to use Claude Design to create a new design from scratch. And this is essentially, as mentioned, the first of the 2 workflows that I'll be covering. So you're probably wondering, well, when do I use this? So you want to use this workflow when you want to explore what a new design could look like and quickly generate some starting point. And that quickly generate starting points is really where a lot of the value lies. So before I show the process, I wanted to show you kind of the final outcome. So we wanted to create a pricing page for a product called Type Ahead. It's at typeahead.ai if you want to check it out. And this was kind of the outputs we got in terms of the pricing page option. So, wanted to start with the goal in mind. It was a pricing page and wanted to show you folks kind of what we got to. Now, how did we get there? So this is the prompt. And this is one of the reasons that Claude Design is really cool. You can give it essentially a one-shot prompt like this and get something as a starting point that's actually pretty decent. So first thing, create 3 different examples of a pricing page for my app, Type Ahead. Here's a link. So then it went ahead and it did a good job. Like it got kind of the product right. It even got a bunch of the copy right. So for any of you that don't know, Type Ahead is one of my products. And what it does is it has a universal type ahead autocomplete across all the apps you use, which includes Slack, iMessage, etc. So when you read this copy, it's actually pretty good. It took all the copy and all that and whipped up a pricing page and did a lot more than design, in my opinion. It actually did the copy and all of that stuff. This is why I say you essentially have an expert designer, because an expert designer also understands copywriting and things like that and is able to write copy. And so this is kind of where it started. But there was one problem, which is it didn't get the colors right, like the green's off, for example. So I just told it, use the same color palette from the website, right? And that was my follow up for it. And, you know, that's kind of the state of the art when I see all this stuff. A lot of folks will one shot it and won't do something that they want, and they just won't iterate it or know how to iterate it. For me, I am more than happy to have speed and trade off these kind of things where I need to give it feedback or iterate it, because this is just faster than any other way you can do this work, period. I don't know a faster way to get design work done than Claude Design at this point. So there is a better way, and I will show that later in the session as well. And then that follow-up prompt with the screenshot included was basically enough to get us pretty close to something where we could take that, polish it up, one of these 3 versions, for example, and kind of move on, so to speak. And because of how flexible they've made Claude Design, this is like super doable within their product by, editing a bunch of this stuff, including all the variables related to this. So this is where like you could, if you wanted to, hand it off to a designer or start playing with this yourself and changing some of these things up from here. And then finally, might be my favorite part, is the fact that when you're happy with the output, there's a whole bunch of different ways that you can share it. So I really feel like the team understood what the use case was of their product by letting us take it out in all different ways. And of course, as you can imagine, the most useful option is, yeah, I just saw Hirschi, sorry if I butchered your name, talk about how you can send it to Claude Code. Yeah, most people don't know that because it's just buried and it's in the share, and it's weird because it says share. Shouldn't there be a dedicated button? Because aren't we still in Claude? But that's a whole different story. So basically, it can be sent to Claude Code and can be built directly into your code base. And that's really, really incredible. So that was like the first workflow that I went through and I like to go through. I do like to define which one I'm doing. So this one is more about iterating a design. So it would be about iterating something that maybe we started with. While the previous one was taking something out there in the world. It didn't even have to be our own website. In this case, it was. But now we're getting to some more advanced use cases. Happy to talk about those. But this one's all about iterating something that we already had a starting point for. So before I show the process, again, here's the final outcome. I iterated the design of the resources page for Hiten.com. What this means is we came up with the design where we wanted to share the resources that we have, and Zach just linked to the page in there, and just wanted to make it better. Had some ideas, and basically started with a page like that you see at the top, and then the red arrow points to basically what we got to with Claude Design. So this is a starting point. It had just this is just placeholder copy. It's pretty plain and boring, and it's just a text and a thumbnail image. So nothing too complicated, but this was our starting point. I love this version of using Claude Design as well, because you can just start with something. And then we didn't just start with something, went ahead and actually gave it some inspiration. So this is from another website. It's a website called micro.so. And we wanted to copy a similar book/design effect and wanted to use Claude to help us do that. So here we are. That's the prompt. Basically, I gave it both screenshots and said, I want to replace the image on the right on the resource download page with a book style image inspired by the books in the second screenshot. And then also tried to get some bonus there and had Claude do some extra work, but want to improve the design in any other way that it can think of. Didn't know what I was going to get because obviously with AI, you don't know what you're going to get till you get it. And, it gave me an output. So this was the output. It still needed a few tricks, but it was definitely enough to hand it off to Claude Code and start building into Hiten.com. And this was kind of the first iteration I gave. We did work with it a little bit more because some of these things, which I'll talk about later, are some of the patterns I see with Claude Design that are not good. And basically, same thing here, right? Share the Claude Code, copy the command. Claude Code is able to fetch the design and then incorporate it in. So that's workflow number 2. And this is exactly how you basically do that. So what's interesting about this is that you can essentially send it to a coding agent just by this prompt. And it doesn't have to necessarily be Claude Code. So I think that lends to some really interesting options and opportunities of taking this to other places too. And then, yeah, this was the kind of basically the final work. And we're going to ship something very close to this for it. Again, you can see some of the issues with the text and all that, but that's all the things that we solve in implementation. And, one thing I'll just quickly pause and say here is Claude Design's not perfect. It will never be perfect because it's using AI. And there's a lot of things that you're going to want to polish. And, I'll jump into a bunch of those now. So here are 5 quick tips and tricks. I know I call them quick and all that, but these are actually the key ones that will essentially turn you into a pro, as I like to say it. So, okay. So this one's really important. And I think anyone that's worked with designers and design probably knows this, but you want to get your inputs right. And the way they've set up Claude Design, they've made it exceptionally easy to do that. And so what I would do if you've got a team that you're working with, whether it's developers or designers, have them give you something. It could be the fig file. It could be a folder. It could be like a link to Claude, the GitHub. They also let you add the fonts, logos, stuff like that. So I feel like they were very instructive in how they sort of decided to let us input. And the one I was actually most impressed with was essentially linking to a repo. And so the goal here is if you're working with something existing or have an idea of what you're trying to get done and have a starting point, you can essentially use this. One thing I've done that's sort of a good hack is I'll go into the Chrome browser, go to a website, maybe even an app, and go file download and download the HTML. Then I'll just upload the HTML in here in the link code from your computer thing. And believe it or not, I can almost copy any site using that very quickly. And so that's probably the tip number 1, but also hack number 1. And then I think this is a very big related thing, which is essentially you should be referencing as much as you can whenever you can. Think of this as just giving Claude Design context. So what we did earlier was gave it a reference to something, right? Which was what we wanted it to start with and what we wanted it to modify when it came to the landing page in the book and all that stuff. So this is probably my number 1 trick, which is if I don't like it, what it did or anything like that, I will usually just come back and try to give it a reference or give it an example or something like that. They just make it really easy to do all that kind of stuff. So this is actually tip 3, not 4. We'll fix that in the slides. But basically, don't settle for a one shot. I think this is again, the same kind of trick you get when you're prompting, but with Claude Design, it's slightly different because you can get 80% of the work. And later on, I'll talk more about where the issues are of the 20%. But you can get 80% of the work done, but you want to go back and forth with your opinion and all those kinds of things. And you don't want to expect 100% great thing on the first shot. I've never gotten that from LLMs in general, but with Claude Design, I think it's even more important for you to really think through what are you looking at, look at it, and actually decide how to improve it. And I think this problem or this opportunity is probably going to get much more crisp for folks as we start using this more and we start seeing more of the sort of patterns and all that. And then this part, I think, ends up being really buried in the product, but you can actually edit and collaborate in Claude Design on these designs with your team. And if there's folks that are more technical, they can go in and sort of mess with all the variables. Even if you're not technical, you can start try to play around with them and do it. And the cool thing is you can either prompt it or you can do these manual type of adjustment. And I think that's where the friendliness of the tool for someone who's might not be a designer, and yet the collaboration you can do with a designer who can fix a bunch of this stuff is actually like out of this world in terms of how easy it is for both parties to do what they want the way they want it. There's a really brilliant design decision from Claude Design in terms of, or from the Anthropic team in terms of how they did this. All right, this is my favorite slide in the whole talk because I think this is what we're all learning together, and I find new ones of these pretty often now. I was just talking to someone earlier, and we were laughing about one version of this that we had noticed. That's a new one, which I will share. But basically, you want to just keep an eye out for these tells. So one example that I'm kind of blown away with, and I'm hoping it gets fixed, is that Claude Design will add italics to essentially everything. And everything meaning like every headline has some italic in it for some reason. Even the fonts it uses by default have kind of a certain vibe to them. So I would just try to knock out uh, more of that and make sure that you're not letting that stay in your design. A lot of folks might not really understand the difference between why that's good, why that's bad, or that the fact that it's a pattern. But I think over time, we're going to get more and more used to these patterns. So another example is it has section labels. So for some reason, when you build a website, it's adding these labels to almost everything that look okay. But if you look at most websites, they don't have labels like that or anything like an observation. Like that's a label. It's adding those like normally. I think the purple gradients we've already kind of gotten used to. Another version of the purple gradients is essentially cream background, as you can see from these backgrounds and most of the stuff. So that's a big one. And then I think there are certain things that you'll see sometimes where it'll just throw dark mode by default. Who knows why? And then of course, generic copy, all the copy tells of not X, Y, and all that good stuff. But I think more and more folks are getting used to that. So the reason I'm harping on this specific one and this sort of tip and why it's my favorite slide is like, this is our opportunity as humans to essentially actually judge what's produced and make a call and make an improvement so that it feels unique. And I think that's that 20% that I hope people take away from this, which is like, don't just take what it has and say, okay, great. Like this is great. Instead, what you want to do is essentially look at it and make sure it actually makes sense. I've seen so many designs these days where they shipped it all the way to the website and I look at it and I'm like, huh, like I don't really care that it's obviously AI as much, but I look at it and I'm like, there's just so many pieces that are just janky, or someone didn't really read it or think through the flow of this page or any of that, and just took a one shot or a few shots. So what I like to say about that is essentially your judgment is showing with AI. And so, judge well and make some calls is kind of my recommendation there.